So it's been about 5 months since I've been laid off from my job. Now, I didn't get laid off because they were restructuring the company or they were just like, oh, you're not doing well at your job or any of that nonsense. I got laid off because my contract ended because I was on a 2-year contract and I thought it was going to get, extended where I was going to be able to move into another role as some positions were starting to be created and I was going to be able to, just be transferred into another role. Well, the thing is, by the time summer hit and I applied and I was on vacation and I got back and I thought, okay, this new job that they had posted, they created the board of directors had created 4 new jobs and a few of them had gotten posted. So I, applied. I told my boss, hey, I'm going to apply for this job. And, they said, yeah, go ahead. And I let my coworkers know, hey, I'm going to probably, get to hopefully stay and work with you guys a lot longer. But that wasn't the case because months and months passed. Of course, the typical, you apply, you get the email saying, thanks for applying, you should hear back from us at some time. Well, time and time I waited and I hadn't heard nothing. And I went to a training before I got laid off. Now, I got laid off in October and I had this training in August because we have to go through a refresh training every year due to the work we do as a public agency. And the thing is while I was there, I met one of the, guys that worked under me. I mean, I wasn't his boss, but, as someone who was in the agency and then you have a contractor, we're technically the overseers to the contracting personnel, whatever they may be doing. And we were talking and my coworker was there and, he was saying, yeah, we already did interviews. And I was like, what? I never even got a rejection. He's like, yeah, we're already on the first round of interviews. And of course he was telling me that people weren't really too satisfied with the candidates they had. And I said, well, I'm somebody that's been working in this department for the last 2 years. I don't know why they haven't considered. And he's like, yeah, well, that's not really my decision at the end of the day. That's, up to the whoever, makes that final call, which, we all know. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you other people know that's the same thing that we all go through. It's not really us that makes the final decision. It's somebody else pulling the strings. And I've seen this happen numerous times. And I'll get more into that in a minute about, seeing, getting interviews and not getting anywhere. But really what frustrated me was they create this job and, somebody like me who's already working for the company and doing all these things, going out in the field and doing field work, doing office work. My job was a mix of field work and office work. I did like 50-50. I did get to work from home some days as being a government employee, which was nice. I know a lot of people, always crave that. A lot of people want that. But the thing was that, the job was like very niche. It didn't need a lot of experience. You didn't need a lot of, skill, but you just needed to have basic understanding. And I had already done that as I was working with guys that, had, 10, 15 years of experience or even more. And I was getting a lot of that knowledge from them and putting it into, the resume that, everybody has to have, and the cover letter and all that. And, getting my certifications, which everybody has to get. And I was already qualified, to work at the company because when you become a new employee, whether you're an agency or a contractor personnel, you have to be qualified to do the job. I don't want to get into the specifics of it, but let's just say, basically it's a safety thing, it's a liability thing, and it's just required by everybody that's a field worker. So anyway, the whole thing was that, time was ticking by every day, and finally it just got to the point where they ended up getting somebody. Now, I was kind of frustrated, and I let my coworkers know I am, disappointed, and I let a lot of people know that I was kind of let down, and I was a bit distraught. I wasn't like going home and crying, but I was just, I was down in the dumps because I had applied to many jobs before that as it was just, what people were telling me, like, oh, hey, you need to start applying now, and I did that. I listened to those people that have been in the company, 10, 15 years or more, and, I did that, and it just never worked out, and it just became a thing to me when it just doesn't work out. So then, fast forward, a couple months later, we get this new guy. He had come from a different agency and he was a nice guy. I respected him. He had years of experience and there was nothing wrong with it. I didn't hold a grudge against him one time. I stayed there till the end, until my last day. But of course, lo and behold, my boss, we had a meeting prior in the summer about my, time coming up and I said, hey, I know my time's coming up, I just want you to be aware of that. Well, the funny thing is that, by the time the end came and I was going to leave, the HR department wasn't even on board. They were not paying attention. And I had to reach out personally, which I know a lot of you were probably thinking, well, why did you have to reach out? Well, guys, this was literally the last week of work. Like I was supposed to be out the door on Friday. I had already packed my office up. I had packed all my stuff that I'd brought in, like I had my certificates, I had my degree, hanging up. I had some little knickknacks, just stuff that I'd collected, and I started packing all that, and got ready, was going through my laptop and doing all the things, to transition, out of the role. But the stupid thing was that even my poor boss, had a meeting with me, and, it was like last minute, and even they were just not, they just didn't understand why HR didn't contact them. And I said, well, I can't tell you why they didn't contact you. I had to reach out to them personally because I knew when my time was coming up. And I'm not saying my boss didn't know better, but, they're such a busy person. It's just, you have a lot going on. You're pretty high up in a company, and you have a small department, you have a lot going on. You have a lot of meetings you have to attend. You have to meet with a lot of outside personnel. You have to meet with city officials and other contractors and other entities that, normally you don't really think that they have to interact with. But I was involved with that a lot. So anyway, what I want to say is that, being unemployed is not the worst thing. I've been able to collect unemployment. It's not been a lot of money, but it was a lot more than my previous job where I was making around the same money, but not really doing a whole lot with that job because it was not really getting me anywhere. But to tell you the truth, being unemployed is not the worst thing, but it is, it puts you on edge for a while because eventually that money is going to run out. And if you've either saved up money or you haven't saved up money, do you have, maybe a student loan or some other big expense that you just know that it's right there, it's in the back of your mind, basically, is what I'm trying to get at. But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to say that, it's been a journey, and I never thought to this day I was going to be making videos about talking about this, but, I'm pretty sure a lot of other people can relate to this, that they, they're having a hard time getting in to other jobs. And I just want to tell you guys, look, it's a tough road, guys. There's a lot going on the last 5 months. Just hang in there. Try to stay focused, try to stay positive and all these other things. But really the number one thing is, unemployment is not the end. It's not the end of the world. It's a take a break. It's, pause. It's just, to me, it's a time to just reflect on things and, try to survive. And it's just one of those things, we can't stress about it. I don't try to stress about it every day. Yeah, there's some days it gets to me where I'm just not too happy and I'm frustrated. I still keep applying and I still keep getting rejected. I see on social media, I see on other people's videos that they're having the same problem. And, we're all going through it, guys. I want you just to know that you're not the only one. I'm also, somebody that, is just trying to make it. I'm not trying to be rich or famous. I'm just trying to make it and survive. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you other folks out there can agree. We're just trying to make it. But, unemployment is not the worst thing, but it is something to, consider if you feel like, oh, I'm going to get let go or the company's going to restructure. Just think about it. You get a break. If you paid into the system, you get the benefits of the system back. And, if you have a 401k or anything like that, you just don't touch it. Don't touch it. Leave it alone. Let it continue to build. Search for other ways to find income. Maybe do side hustles. Maybe if you have something you don't want anymore, sell it off. Just stuff like that. This is just general advice. Doesn't mean you have to follow my advice, but I just want everybody to know they can relate to what I'm telling you. I've been through the ringer too, and it's not fun, but it's been a journey so far, and hopefully, everybody else that, is listening to this understands it's a journey, and you just have to take it one day at a time. Don't worry about tomorrow, as for today has its own worries, So I'll just leave you with that, guys. Hope everybody, has a good 2026, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.